Atacama Desert for the past 15 years, something like that, finding amazing places in order to understand the close relationship between water and life, and what can that tell us on how we could look for evidence of life as well in places like Mars. So in time, for example, I have seen beautiful examples in this extreme environment of how when you have enough water, in this case, the ocean mist, you are able to see the few places in which microbial life, we're going to talk only about microbial life in these extreme conditions, that are able to survive exposed to the environment, right? There are just a few places where that can happen. Then if you take just a few steps away from the coast of the Atacama, you're going to see some interesting phenomena like this deep green biofilm growing in the inside of caves, living with the minimum amount of life, able to photosynthesize even in that, but then protected conditions. In other caves, we have seen similar phenomena. In this case, it's another cave in the coastal region of Atacama, in which close to the entrance, we have detected a type of microalgae that's able to survive on top of the spider web that cover the cave entrance, because the spider is quite hygroscopic, so that is to have a source of water. In this case, I'm showing that this species, the only species of an entire genus that is able to survive in a subaerial environment. Then we advance just a few hundred meters in the coastal region of Atacama. Life has to find different type refugia. In this case, quartzes. Under quartzes, you can see those green biofilm, because quartz is translucent to the range where the photosynthetic light is able to use it. And from such ecosystem, we have found a few cyanobacteria which has started poking from the molecular point of view in order to understand how they're able to survive using such a water, etc., etc. And so I'm showing one of the same bacteria we have isolated from the cytolytic biofilm. But then we get into the high paradigm core of the Atacama Desert, places where we have measured that. I mean, we have not been able to measure any water in the atmosphere because it's just too dry, right? Typically, in the afternoon in the high paradigm core, relative humidity drops to zero. And we're trying to understand how even in these places and the proper conditions, you can still find microbial life, right? So it goes through a range, although you have some humidity due to ocean mist or the coastal fogs, and you don't see any evident source of water, but you can still find life on the subsurface. So in time, we have approached places like this one, right, in which we have tried to understand how life is able to survive in such conditions. And then also to understand, and it is a beautiful example that life is an environment. Let's remember that Atacama, the oldest desert on Earth, is 150 million years as a desert, in which when you have too much water, in this case caused by global warming that has caused the water of the Pacific to rise up, which does create more evaporation, then more clouds, and then having rains that have never recorded in this region. We have found that these species simply are so well adapted to the lack of water that when confronted with these unusual rains, they simply don't know how to deal with them. So they are so specialized in trapping water, they start trapping water until they explode. And actually, we actually published a paper on that in the first time ever that something was showing that in this case, water was toxic for life as we know it. So in time, we have understand the relationship with water and life from the epidemic way of life, in this case, how you can find life exposed to the environment, in a sense of cases here, because water activity is still high enough for that. Then if you move just a little inland, as the hypolytic way of life, in the case of quartzes, you can see that the water activity during the day now is starting getting close to zero. So the type of mechanism you find there start getting all the mechanisms that are able to survive under such conditions. Then you put a little bit inland, and it will give you a little bit, but I have found, for example, not others, in this case, gypsum, that again fulfill the same similar relationship. And then you get to a place like Maria Elena, which I just showed you, that are so close, I mean, so dry, that with water activity of 0.1, under those conditions, we have been able to find just a couple of bacteria able to survive. Who knows why, how, and we're expecting that, how they to survive in such a natural environment. Other way to see it in this transition from the Paleolithic to the underground is to say, well, depending on what your part of the Atacama you inspect, you can understand that at some point of Mars, when it still have water enough, water life was able to survive, exposed to the environment, that in time got increasingly drying and dry and close, and the place we expect to find any evidence of life, if not life itself, it would be in the underground, right? And I can take you to the specific part of Atacama where you can find those examples and say, well, what epoch you want to understand of Mars? Let me bring you to the proper biological example in such analog from Mars as the Atacama Desert. And all has this been published. And we more or less, as I said, we understood this relationship with water availability and the presence of different type of microorganisms. But there was one single that was missing from our equation, because now I have shown you places like this that are all very similar in the sense that they are all extremely arid. Their extreme flow of UV radiation. You may remember this scale that goes from 0 to 11 that tell you when, for example, to use sunscreen. There are places in the Atacama that in that same scale they have measured level of 30. That is the amount of UV radiation you have there. That many of these soils are highly saline and they have the presence of highly oxidized species than the perchlorate. So all these places have discovered more or less this equation and the combination of these three factors. So the story changed when I saw this picture in 2016. It's a picture taken on Mars, and I realized and said, well, this place looks familiar, and actually it's a place close to the coastal range of Atacama. And I just altered the color of the sky just to see that this is a really red place. And we figured out, well, could it be that red color be displayed in a similar way it has been in the case of Mars? And this place in the area is known as redstone. Okay. So we started characterizing this site with all the tools we have from the point of mineralogy, geology, microbiology, etc., and find them very interesting things. First, we understood that there was a sedimentary succession of different sandstones, mudstones, and evaporites. Okay, so you have a mix of those elements, which I will detail later. And in some cases are really striking on the morphology. You can find on how these different elements, evaporite in particular, start interacting with the environment. We learned then later that this area has already been mapped from the geology point of view, and we understood that where the site is located, as I would describe it, is between 160 and 100 million years old. It's from the times of the Jurassic. It's just a really old place, and actually it's one of the oldest places that you can find in the Atacama. And then we also find previous evidence that this is very interesting. This is the water remnants of an alluvial fan delta which point of origin now is at the Pacific Ocean, which is located here. So we're seeing, given that what I just showed you on the presence of evaporite, evidences of a alluvial fan delta that formed when the Atacama was already an arid place. So it wasn't a well colonized with plants, river delta. No, it was already very, very arid, explaining the presence of sandstone, mudstone, and evaporite in particular. So now we have a very ancient alluvial fan. Then we could explain the presence of the red color because we were able to find hematite all around, giving now a fourth factor of analogy to a proper analog model of Mars. Now we have hematite as well, which give the Mars the name of red planet, right? This oil iron oxide, which we could find as crystal, for example, here, but we'd also find as coating of everything else. So there was this pervasive presence of hematite all around covering everything. That's why the whole site looks so red, right? As I'm showing here. So now that we knew that there was a very ancient river delta that formed at the arid condition, which is critical for how to compare with Mars, right? Well, let's inspect the habitability of these different samples, evaporite, sandstone, mudstone, etc., etc. So first, we use a culture-independent approach in which you extract directly DNA from these samples, and we can find a number of different bigger group of bacteria. But it caught our attention that there was almost 9% that could not be classified, easily classified in the present databases. Let's remember they have like last time I checked like 4.5 billion sequences, right? So they're really well populated with enough information. So you do find in classified sequences from time to time in other some we have found in Atacama, but not that high, almost to 9%, right? So keep that in mind. When we reorder that data, we also found very intriguing because from all those sequences you can into the species level up to very high in the hierarchy to the domain level. So just in 2% of the cases, we could say we have found as a species, let's say Bacillus subtilis, for example, right? In 57%, it's a huge percentage, only the genus. Okay, so you have Bacillus, but we don't know what species it is. But with all our attention to all the sequences that were categorized with not much further information, with a higher taxa, like the domain, meaning that in this case, for example, we have a 15% of sequences, and we got like 3,000 sequences that the database could not tell us more than, okay, so you have a bacteria here. We could not tell you more. what kind of bacteria it is, less the order or the family or the genus or the species. So with that, if you add the unclassified sequence that could not have no information, plus the one that we could reorder in order to understand up to what level of information we give you, it will give you like almost half of our sequences. We could not tell much what they are. So this is very intriguing. With that, we borrow a term invented by our friends, the physicists, on dark matter. So, well, maybe we're here, we can propose a new scientific term, which is the dark microbiome, referring to the species that we know they are rare because we can even extract DNA from them, and actually it's that very one with actual sequences. But when you compare it with the database, you cannot clearly say what is coming from, right? This is very intriguing that there are still places that they can find such sequences. And here there's two alternatives. One, that are actually so weird microorganisms that they have not any comparison, may be the case. But what I think it is the case actually is that those are the remnants of the DNA from the species that used to inhabit the delta as was when it still have water 160 million years ago. And that's why we cannot easily compare it with current microorganisms that you have there. And I give you this example. In this particular sequence, if you compare with the database, you will find it described as unknown, unclassified. I mean, how many ants can the ID have in order to tell you we don't know what this is coming from? We don't only know that it's coming from bacteria. That's it. Okay, so the second is that the way to approach any of these environments is try to cut whatever you can. And this is just a matter of luck. You use, in this case, we use a set of growth media that we know that have worked in the case of Atacama sample. And the typical example that we will find in this site that after several weeks, not days, like E. coli, weeks, in which you can find just one single bacteria here, nothing else. Compared with the soil bacteria you have in organic that I'm showing here, right? So here. So we found species like Bacillus, Allobacillus, and other BG Bacillus, typically species that are related to saline environments. We hope we could be able to see such bacteria by staining the DNA, but just in a few clumps of cells here and there, you have to really look for them in order to find such examples like this one. We could find some of the lipid biosignature left behind with total organic content very low, from 0.02 to 0.1 at most. Most of them, we could not even detect anything, less any lipid biosignatures. But because we could find piston and phytin that are the degradation process of chlorophyll. And that tells me that maybe, and along the presence of hopanes, which are the more resilient type of lipid biosignatures you can find around, that we have evidences on that this kind of structures are left behind in the mudstones in particular, when again, this type of clays being present there, vermiculite, smectite, etc., giving the idea that we have a remnant of the photosynthetic species that used to live in this site when it had water, not anymore, right? And that's which explained, by the way, why the Perseverance Rover is now inspecting a very similar environment and also river delta, and also finding evidence of place with the hope of finding any biosignatures inside, in this case, this crater. So now we have characterized well this site. The question that followed, well, now that we know that we have a very limited detection of different types of microorganisms, and now that we know there is an ancient river delta, what the current regeneration instruments that are going to Mars will be able to detect here? And then they came to surprise me, because let me tell you very briefly, a SAM-like pyrolysis instrument, a testbed instrument that is similar to the one being on board Curiosity, right, could detect aromatics, but not in all samples, could barely detect alkynes, and again, not in all samples. And the people that did this experiment talk, well, probably alkynes would not be detected by the flying instrument because the testbed instrument we use here was 10 times more sensitive than the one actually on Mars. But after derivative detection, they could detect a few carboxylic acids and some polymolecular and even proline. And also some decarboxylic and unsaturated fatty acid, but with the advice of, well, if they are not abundant enough format, because here again we would barely detect it. In the case of MoMA, which is the Mars Organic Molecular Analysis that will be sent along the Rosalind Franklin rover, they could not detect any direct organic, but after the detection, they could detect aliphatic carboxylic acid, but only one sample. We have a very own instrument, which is the solid L-chip, which is it uses an array of antibodies. It could find a few hits just over the limit, but again, at least in all samples. And interestingly, it could find evidence of the Phocationellin subunit alpha, which is one of the antenna pigment of cyanobacteria. Actually, I'm showing you here one of the bacteria were isolated from the quarter. So it was an additional evidence that maybe we are detecting the remnants of cyanobacteria that were able to survive in this site. Drifts, another instrument, were able to barely detect an organico in the near infrared region. It could detect very weak bands in the mid-infrared region, but that was it. This was all published, and it tells us in general that, well, we need to do a better job here in how to detect the events of life, right? And as you may imagine, I made a lot of new friends saying that you have to better do a better job in this. But for me, it's a very important lesson on the still nowadays pertinence of analog model like Redstone. I mean, if you bring your instrument that you hope to set whatever, in this case on Mars, and you're not able to detect evidence of life in environment like Redstone, you're going to have trouble, right? That's important on working in analog model, because it can direct us in order to better build the next generation detection instrument that can actually do a good job by testing it in the most close analog environment that you can find of Mars on Earth. That also makes the comment why it's interesting and important that bring pieces of Mars to Earth in the Mars return mission, right? But let's remember that those are rather surface samples. And one thing that I have seen in the case of the Atacama, similar the samples that were inspected by the Viking mission, one thing that I found is that in the case of the Atacama, that given that the environment is so extreme, at least in the high parametric core, that the top centimeters of the Atacama are so highly UV irradiated along the thermal changes and the salinity, etc., that the surfaces typically are close to sterility. And that is the case of Earth. So just imagine what are you doing similarly in the case of surface soils of Mars. So I'm not sure when we're going to be able to detect anything on those surface soils of Mars in terms of getting Mars, right? As you might imagine, for this I will make even more friends with this comment. The people that are working in the Mars return mission, but we have to keep in mind those are surface samples. And that's here why the MoMA may excel, because the Rosalind Franklin rover will have this tool that will be able to work 1 meter of depth, which is the one place I have found evidence of life in the most extreme environments of the Atacama. So we are at least going to the proper part of Mars where you sample where you could have a higher chance of having finding anything. To finalize, let me stop with a few comments here. These are very personal comments. First, what are we actually looking for as evidence of life from Mars up to now? We're looking for organics, right? But let's keep in mind this guy here, asteroid Ryugu, which was recently found to contain tons of organics of every type. Has anyone claimed that they have found evidence of life on Ryugu? No, right? So let's transfer all those beautiful organisms of Ryugu and put it on the surface of Mars here, and let's detect them. Could that tell us about finding evidence of life on Mars? No, they are just organic of an unknown source, right? And let's remember the history of impacts that Mars has in order to bring everything from outside that could bring such organics. So probably organic is not the sole answer for looking for evidence of life on Mars. For me, it would be polymers. Give me something like a 10 amino acid peptide, and ideally 2 similar length peptide of different composition. Then I will be thinking, okay, so now we will thinking of having a proper evidence of life in anywhere actually. Give me a branched sugars in this case. Now we could talk not just a few amino acids, not just a few sugar, but polymer. That would be a proper answer. Second, morphological internal complexity. Here I'm showing you all kinds of pseudo fossils that are easily done, but look like true fossils, but are not. But I have never read about looking into morphological internal complexity. It's very difficult to create the biotic point of view something as complex as the one showing here, which is a true fossil, right? And here I'm showing just again well-known true fossils, but when you see the internal structure, it will be very difficult to think that you can come up with something like this from the biotic point of view, or even this one here, right? So morphological internal complexity could be a second alternative. And actually, we have developed a problem based on artificial intelligence in this case to analyze the structural complexity. For example, looking at a picture here in order to identify whether this software could then tell us that the lichen growing there, the orange stain you see in the top of the rock, can be make different from the rock that sustained it. With our program, we can say that the rock complexity is different from the lichen the complexity in order to say, well, I don't know what is this made of, but at least the structural complexity is high enough because you make an eye on this phenomenon. Not only something you can get to see with your eye, but something you can use with an orbiter. In this case, we're analyzing the growth of plants on dunes in the Atacama, and we have been able to differentiate from different geological bindings like basalt, and again, sending a different similar response. The interesting here, when we use this software in order to decipher sedimentary particles on Mars, we've got a mixed response that maybe it was not between the living and non-living phenomena, but it was something in between, telling us very, very, very preliminary that life may have been involved in such sedimentary processes, because you know that once you have life, sedimentary processes are completely different when you don't have it. The other last one, let's mind what Galileo say. Actually, he never said that, but it still stuck to him, that most microbial life, not most, but many type of microorganisms are able to move, right? Let's see, we get to see this video here running. Many microorganisms are able to move in their environment, right? And even, for example, their videos are not working, but let me just a few of them. Microbial life likes to move around. So if you can see something moving, and of course that brings you to the problem of how you're going to be able to do that on Mars or wherever you're taking samples or not. But many microorganisms are to move in a water environment. So if there was life Mars, it is still around in this, for example, Martian bullets, that you can find some few craters where they make some fluid that going top of the crater as evidence of a bigger amount of body of water, most likely highly saline. Maybe that's also a way to do it. And again, a new idea of how to actually look for evidence of life. With that, let me finish saying that, for example, I just found a few years about this in the Atacama, and I have no idea what it's made, but I know that things are moving inside. And these guys that seen the media eukaryotic cells of some type have not been able. I just see one per every, I don't know, 100 fields inspecting quarters of the high particle. I have no idea what it is, but I'm based on the media cells living because I see movement inside, right? And so I'm using such approach in order to say, well, let's describe unknown still thing. And with that, thank you for attending this today. Please, I'm welcome as much question as you may have.